heißen meine Brüder und Schwestern des Orten willkommen. Willkommen zurück in der Bestellung. Ich bin ein Kritiker Templar. And today, y'all, we're gonna get back into history and firearms. And today, y'all, we're actually gonna get into one of my favorite, and probably seems to be y'all's favorite, none other than the Luger. That's right, y'all. Today we are talking about the infamous Luger. This is kind of actually one of my favorite pistols in history, and I knew I had to get dressed up for it in the SS form, because one, apparently this gun is viewed as the SS pistol, even though it technically hardly got used by the SS by World War II. So many people might want to know the history about the, well, infamous Luger. Where did it come from? What was its origins? Well, pretty much, yeah. Now, the really cool thing is the Luger has actually been in our history ever since 1908. However, it had earlier designs prior before that, since like the early 1900s. In fact, probably since 1900 itself. Now, the really cool thing is, the majority of times, this pistol was a game changer for everybody. And the weird thing is, this was a revolutionary technique in firearms technology. It kind of led the way for the semi-automatics and all that. And the really cool thing is, I always love that really cool flip-up thing. Now, many people actually say that this gets dirt or grime or whatever into the gun. It does not. I have actually seen InRange do mud tests on this dang thing. I will leave a link down below for y'all if any of y'all want to see what it looks like. Here's the thing. Your hearts and mine will be like, ah! Don't do it! But unfortunately they do, and it scares me to this day, because you never do that with a Luger. Ever! Now I want to put this out here. The Luger is one of my favorite pistols ever since I was young. Now, the first time I ever saw a Luger, which, this is actually weird. The first time I actually ever saw Lugers was not because of Call of Duty, wasn't because of Medal of Honor, wasn't because of any video game. It was actually because I was what you could call a history freak, or a history nerd. I was deep into history and firearms. And unfortunately, ever since I was born, apparently I've had a deep love for weaponry, equipment, and firearms, and technology. I like that, because one, it's beautiful in my mind. So, yeah, the first place I ever saw it, I think, was the History Channel, back when History Channel was still history instead of whatever the hell is now. Now, I actually love the Luger. And that's saying something. I love the Luger in general because, one, the Luger is quite far the most beautiful pistol in history. It's elegant, it's extremely accurate, and the fact is, this gun has been copied by more than one country in its own general form because of how good it was. So, yeah, that's saying something. So, where did I get this, you might ask? Well, I thank to my bad boys at none other than Attlebridge. Yes, my boys at Attlebridge had I think they had 3 of them in stock, and I saw this one, it had the best price. I had to get it. Now, the other 2, one of them was just like this. The problem is it didn't have its magazine. That was probably the deal breaker for me, especially with the price it was going for. Then there was also the artillery barrel Luger. Now, what do I mean by artillery barrel? Well, I'm glad you asked. Well, the Luger like this is only one of 3. That's right, 3. This is the common Luger design. Then there is the artillery barrel Luger, or as it was originally known as Carbina Lugaden, or Luger carbine, of which was a elongated barrel, and of which you could actually have a buttstock attachment. In fact, on this one, you actually also have the buttstock lug system attachment, which are also with your holster. That's right, your holster was also your buttstock, which is why many times over, many countries adopted this because of how cool that was. Now, I am still looking for the holster for this, because one, that would be awesome for going at the range, especially just doing this. However, if I am going to make this a carbine, I'm going to have to need the historical drum magazines that came with this bad boy, because one, those are very hard to find. Because majority of those were used in the MP18 mags, so yeah. So what model is this? Well, I looked in much history and I found out this was actually made in 1909. That's right. This would have seen both world wars. And I find that awesome. Now here's the thing. Many people automatically say, oh, but Templar, wasn't your great-grandmother Jewish? This is kind of holding a gun that was used by a war criminal. Well, not exactly, because one, further down my line in family, we actually fought in World War I for the German Empire. That's right. My ancestors, my great-great-grandfather ended up fighting for, well, the Germany during World War I. And apparently he started off as a buck private and ended up, by the end of the war, he became a lieutenant. That's saying something. So, or I think it was a Lieutenant or like an NCO, like a non-commissioned officer or a warrant officer, but most likely he probably ended up becoming a lieutenant by the end of the war. Still, these are actually still one of my favorite pistols to this day, and kind of awesome to see why. Now, why are the Lugers probably the most iconic bad guy gun? Well, that's because of the SS. However, these guns were not just used by the SS. Now, I hear many people already saying, oh, Templar, this gun is iconic with Germany. It's iconic with the SS. It's iconic with this. Yeah, here's the thing. That's not exactly true. Because one, this gun was also iconic with the British and as well United States military and as well French and even as far away as Russia, the Soviet Union, and even into China. That's right, this pistol saw a lot of places. And the fact is, the manufacturers, known as Luger, actually tried to sell their product to other countries. So in doing so, they could get, well, more money. And the design got very high windage in countries such as Great Britain, France, as well as some parts of Austria-Hungary. Now, the United States was real close into adopting this. That's saying something. That's right, America was extremely close to adopting this badass pistol. Now, I hear many people already saying, why didn't we adopt this? Well, because I think there was at least about somewhere between 700 to around 1,000 of these Lugers manufactured in the United States. That of which were chambered for the 45 ACP. Now, many people will automatically say, Templar, I never heard of a 45 ACP Luger. Well, that's because it was extremely rare and used by the United States. The United States that did want to commission this wanted it to be in 45 ACP because we wanted the stopping power. Because when we got used to using it in our Colt revolvers, we didn't want to give it up. So the German manufacturer thought, okay, we'll just make it slightly bigger, and they did. This though fires 9mm, sadly. I wish it was a 45 ACP model. That would have been awesome. And the very sad thing though is, for every one of these Lugers you can make the 1911 like at least 5 times. So that's kind of why we stopped having Lugers in the United States. Weird thing is though, that didn't stop some people from buying them. That's right. A lot of people that bought these guns before the 1911 was ever created were mostly police units. That's right, police units bought these in order to get a one-up on the bad guy, especially knowing to the fact they could, well, easily be killed, and the chambered bullets like these in this type of gun can actually fire high-velocity rounds. So some police officers wanted that for their type of pistol. And guess what? Lo and behold, the Luger is formed. Now, there is actually an old story from the Wild West during the dying days of the Wild West that the last outlaw that was actually killed in the Wild West was killed because he grabbed a Luger. Now, what does this mean? Well, simple. Let me just pull that trigger real quick, because one, this is no bullets in here, but I'm trying to put my point here. What actually happened was, the guy grabs the gun. He doesn't know how to use the fire. Look at this outlaw has never even held one of these things. He doesn't even know how to use it. So the gun was already loaded. It already had the hammer already pulled back like that. But there was a problem. He didn't know how to work the safety system. In fact, it was actually stated that the guy tried pulling back this hammer piece, because what? It wouldn't go back because the safety is on and he can't operate the system. Now here's the thing. He actually tried pulling the trigger and everything. Nothing happened. The problem is, it wouldn't go off because that safety system right here was on safety. That gave the officer precious time to put a couple of rounds in him. So, technically, it was a good idea to have a Luger. And in fact, many people in the big cities, such as New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Miami, or Richmond, Virginia, Austin, San Antonio, or any one of the big cities here in the United States, guess what? They're going to use this pistol. That's what cops did use. And they used it for a while until the 1911 came around. Which is kind of disappointing because, one, only a few Walther type designs were out there, or Luger designs, I should say, or Walther Luger, whatever you want to pronounce it as. Yeah, it was nicknamed the Walther Luger 45 ACP Special. Yeah, that's a mouthful. So that's why they later just called it either the Luger Special or the Walther Special. I don't know why they called it the Walther, because one, this is actually, I don't know, I literally do not know. I looked this up and I can't find out why. But apparently the Americans us Americans accidentally mistaken this for Walther for some reason. I still don't know why. It is weird to this day, and it's kind of weird, I know. But the weird thing is, the German manufacturing design for this was so impressive that Americans kind of did copy from this in order to make the 1911. Now, though, we made a cheaper design variant of the Luger in order to make it, well, slightly better. Now, many people end up buying something that looks near identical to this and think it's a Luger. Here's the thing. That's probably not a Luger. That's a Ruger, probably, dang it. Now, a lot of y'all don't know the difference between Ruger and Luger. Here's the thing. Ruger is an American company. Luger is a German company. This is a German pistol. That is a Ruger hunting carbine. Here's the thing. I actually do want to get the German carbine, or the carbine, so that way I could probably use it as a carbine. Problem is they are very rare to find. I still need to get an artillery barrel, then I gotta get the said buttstock for it. So yeah, that's kind of the problem. So many people do ask though, but Templar, why so many people not know the difference? Well, that's because a lot of people are kind of idiots. Yeah. But yeah. Now, I do love about this mag system is this really cool thing is with the loader assist. Problem is, this is the original mag, and it is a hell of a nightmare when I try and reload it every time. Because see, as you can see here with the spring system, that is actually what helps you load in the bullets. Now, you see me firing this, and sometimes it jams up or whatever. At first, I thought it was a gun, like y'all would right now, but it wasn't the gun or the bullets. It was actually the magazines. I'm using pre-World War I style magazines. What I needed were late World War I or post-World War I mags, that of which were actually stated to actually help this thing out a little bit better. Because one, every time you fire this gun, sometimes the magazine drops or whatever. In other words, it doesn't stay in place. Because as y'all... I'm trying to get that in good frame for y'all. As y'all see, the system actually has to follow up with the follower. Problem is, that system doesn't always want to go into the feed system. So, yeah, that's kind of the problem with the Luger during its early years. It was only after World War I that they fixed the problem with the magazine, but by then, it was a little too late. Yeah. Which I'm kind of sad, too, about that. But now, there have been countries that tried to copy from this and failed very badly. Those two major countries would be Italy and Japan. Italy would end up making the Glicenti or Glicento type bullet, which is by far the most kind of accurate, but apparently is probably the most dumbest design. In fact, many people who fired that gun don't want to fire it anymore. Oh, and as well, there's also the Japanese Nabu pistols that also tried to copy off of it and failed miserably. And here's the thing, I will never own a Nabu because one of these things are a very scary and very dangerous pistol that I never want to own. They are too dangerous. In fact, apparently a lot of times when people do get historical firearms like that, they somehow accidentally blow themselves in the foot. Now here's the thing. I know a guy that I used to do reenactments with. He himself also did that with a Nabu blank fire, or blank shooter as some people call it, or replica shooter, meaning it doesn't fire real bullets, but it does fire as blanks. Lucky for him, but not for his leg, because apparently the scorched hit part of his upper leg on his thigh when he went to holster it. Which is why I will never own one of those, and you will never see it on the channel of me firing one, unless probably in my old age, if I'm going to end up committing some idiotic last generation wish. So yeah, I'm not going to end up firing those. So yeah. Now many people do want to know is, Templar, why is this pistol so great? Simple. You can dump this in mud like what InRange did, and it can keep firing no matter what. The problem is, though, if you use the wrong magazines, or early war magazines, they're not going to work out so well. So what you do need is a, well, better style magazine than what I got. So yeah, there's a heads up for y'all. Now many people will ask, Templar, how am I supposed to know between early pre-war and post-war magazines? Well, that's simple. If we take the magazine like this, this is the pre-World War I design. As you can tell, post-World War magazines would actually have what they call the pressure locker, or pressure clicker. As where you see my thumb and index finger when they go in here, they would end up actually acting like a, you guessed it, as a type of pressure lock system in order to fully lock the magazine in place. Because watch. Because as you can see, it slightly drops. That's my point. So yeah, this was kind of a reason why they had to switch it. Problem is, by the end of World War I, they couldn't manufacture these anymore because, one, they needed to focus on other things. And the fact is, they couldn't focus on making firearms. Yeah. Now, the really awesome thing is, though, a lot of these guns got issued to foreign countries, as far away as parts of Asia and as well parts of America. In fact, many people from both World Wars, many soldiers from both World Wars ended up, like such as American units, ended up capturing these and bringing them back here in the United States. Probably like this one was. Now, a lot of these were also used by the Mexican army, the South Americans army, such as Brazil and such. These guns would have seen a lot of action, and of which, wherever the German Empire was, or wherever the British Empire, the French Empire, wherever they were, they would end up having these as well, before they would start to issue their own decree into using homemade, the traditional firearms from their own country, rather than from a German import. In fact, there was actually an anti-German propaganda type of weapons propaganda. I don't know what it was about, but apparently it's stated that during World War I, a lot of these ended up exploding because I literally do not know how to explain this, but apparently British officers actually stated that the Luger would explode every time they pulled the trigger, and they started to blame the German company for manufacturing them before the war. In fact, the British started saying that the Germans wanted this war to happen in order to kill thousands upon thousands of British officers. However, if we know one thing from history, the trenches the Allies used were phenomenally muddy as hell. Even worse than no man's land. In fact, here's the thing. You think no man's land is hell? The trenches the Allies used were a nightmare. The Allies thought that they would just be there for a couple of days. Let alone, they didn't realize they were going to be there a whole few freaking 4 years. When the Germans knew it was going to be a lot longer, hell, these guns had no problem. But the British and other Allied forces, they had a problem because a lot of times over, it got a lot harder to clean these guns, seeing the fact that they were downhill from the enemy. And that's kind of what made it harder. So yeah, it's no wonder these things started to get muddy and all that, and all the water started to erode the said springs and all that. So yeah, Well, why don't we actually take this bad boy apart, and you can see my point on what I mean by, well, of how you actually have to take this apart and how you actually put it back together. That way y'all can understand on how to properly clean this bad boy, shall we? Alright y'all, now at first we pretty much start off as we follow with the Luger. Pretty much make sure that it is empty, like it is. So as soon as you're empty, pull out your magazine. Come to this little switch right here. Flip it to the side. You can take it out if you want, but I like to leave it in. Makes it easier. Take off your little pad. Then comes the hard part. And it projectiles it out. This somewhat makes it easier, but also complicated in the long run. As your main switch you gotta push out is right here. This is kind of a little bit of a difficult part. I don't have my prior out, so yeah. Okay. There we go. Pull out our slide. And now, as you can see, this is pretty much the entire gadget itself. Here is our mechanism that actually is the pin fire right here. Its entire organization in general. As you can tell, this is how the systematical piece works. Here is our slide of the Luger. And as well, as we see with this piece, it is the one full piece that locks its system in place, which keeps it from, well, moving in and out, as usual. So in other words, the sight system is part of the said systematical type form of firing. Alright, now it's time to put this bad boy back together. So, how would you do this? Well, it pretty much follows as you ended up taking it apart. This, though, ends up requiring you had to properly, well, shove it back into place. As it's technically sometimes easy, depending on how much give you have. But yeah, this is going to be a problem. As you can see, we got to put it over the said hoops here. The said aiming, so that way it probably gets into aiming position. Though this is the problem when it comes to putting it in place, you do have to deal with a slight bit of problem trying to put this pin back in place. Hence its point of holding the said charging piece in place. This is where you gotta get it in. This is the one problem about the gun. It's trying to align it back into place. See my point? It just likes to move a lot, so this is the one problem about Lugers. There we go. Now I gotta get it into the other one, like so. Make sure it's properly in. Sometimes these things like to not get properly in, and it's a problem. So what you gotta do is make sure it's firmly locked, as we see. But see, it's still wanting to stick out. So you could grab a mallet if you want, but I don't want to damage this part as much as it can. So I like to properly push it into place. Because the pin has been known to fall out if you're not properly putting it in. Okay. Now comes somewhat the easy and slightly hard part. You got to make sure this piece right here, our little trigger mechanism, as you see here, to properly fit into the gun. What I would do is first make sure you have it upside down. This is like a two-way process. First, make sure it's upside down like this. Make sure it follows the guide rails until you reach around here. As soon as you get to this part, right behind the magazine system is, slowly falls in, and you're in place. What you got to do is pull up your hammer. This way it helps you push the gun in place. This, though, is kind of a problematical part, because as you can tell, not the easiest thing to do. As I said, this is kind of the hardest part about trying to put this thing back together. Is, for one, the gun does not want to sometimes work. So what you got to do is sometimes hold the piece up a little, but not too far up. Somewhere like right around there would do, as long as it can fit in place. Sometimes this will take a while to properly place in there, because it is placed. Problem is, sometimes, as you can see, if you see them sticking out like this much, that shows that you're not properly in place. So what I got to do is start all over again. See, then the gun won't operate. Okay, finally got it in place. So now let's finish it up. Make sure you put in your piece like this. Now what you're going to have to do is make sure there's a slight bit of tension on it, otherwise it won't go in. Yeah, this is going to be the problematic part. Ah, this is always the problematic part. There we go. This is what happens every time you clean it. This is why I kind of like to keep it oiled. Then just insert your mag, and she's ready to go. Well, I hope y'all actually liked that little taking apart episode. Now, as I said, make sure to properly clean your gun, otherwise you could end up like the idiots of Britain. So, yeah. Now, I do want to put this out here. This pistol has also been seen in various types of combat. Now, the history on the Luger, as I said, is a weird one, and the fact is there are 3 models. The regular officer model, like this, the cavalry carbine model, which is known as the artillery barrel, which is slightly longer and which was originally used by cavalry units. Then there was actually the Stormentruppen model, which was kind of just like this also, or just also like the artillery barrel model, but instead they actually had them with fully automatic, meaning this thing was a fully automatic submachine pistol. You could just every time you pulled the trigger. The problem is, this thing was rapidly unpredictable where it was going to hit, because apparently the recoil was phenomenally hellish of a nightmare. And the fact is, even the German soldiers that actually held this thing didn't want to hold it. Now, if any of y'all actually played Battlefield 1 or Verdun, the video game, that which shows the online multiplayer, here's the thing. I play them as well, and this is why I love World War type scenarios. It shows the last gentlemanly war, which I don't know why. It's the World War I I like a little bit better than World War II. I just find that weird, I know. But the really cool thing is, a lot of these ended up seeing service like that. Now, when it came to the end of World War I, many Germans that came home from the war ended up seeing these guns and they were like, huh, you know what? Let's redo this model. And guess what they did? They ended up manufacturing the Walther P38. Which the Walther P38, which was a mixture between the Colt and the Luger, ended up becoming that design. But I'll have to make a video on that some other time. Now, many people do want to know is, Templar, how great were these pistols? Well, see, the fact I felt somewhat of recoil, but actually not much recoil. And the fact is, I was extremely accurate with this firearm. Now, give and take, this is a pistol, so it's not that accurate. But the thing is, my target was just getting hit after every time. Comparing to the fact, I'm not a big, not as accurate with pistols, because one, pistols are not that extremely accurate. Because one, it's a pistol, you got to use two hands in order to probably get the shot. But what I'm doing is doing it the old-fashioned way. Why the old-fashioned way? Simple. That's how you have to do it. Dang it. But yeah. Now, the really sad part is, during both World War I and World War II, and before World War I, and even before World War II, these guns were sent everywhere. And when I mean everywhere, I mean everywhere. These actually ended up in part of the Japanese Imperial Army, who bought hundreds of these from Germany after World War I. In fact, the Japanese saw of how great a pistol these were, especially when they fought against the Germans in parts of China, when they were invading the colonies and all that, during the World War. And they thought to themselves, hey, this is a great pistol. I want to own this. So guess what? The Imperial Japanese Army started adopting these as their standard pistol. And the weird thing is, the Japanese ended up seeing this and they thought to themselves, maybe we should make our own design? Here's the thing. It was not a good idea. Which is kind of why many Japanese officers rather keep using the Luger rather than the Nabu. I mean, can you blame them? But the really sad part is, one major thing that many people don't understand is how long this gun was used. Because one, it was also used by the Chinese forces of both, Nationalist Republic of China and as well the Socialist Democratic Communist Forces of China. Yeah, there are there are both the Republic of China, which is now Taiwan, and then there is actually the Communist China. So, yeah, there's a confusing part. But as well, these were also used by the Soviet Union, the Russian Empire. These were used by Britain, France. As I said, these were used by a lot of people and a lot of countries, majority in South America. In fact, it's actually stated that the infamous dictator Castro actually owns one of these, or used to own one of them. I don't know if that's true or not. But the weird thing is, a lot of dictators have been known to use this pistol. Why? I don't know. It's kind of weird. To this day, it's still weird. So why is this automatically known as the bad guy gun? Well, simple, because one, the SS is the major reason. And the fact is, there have actually been a load of James Bond films that always show the bad guy using a pistol like this. However, the weird thing is, a lot of these pistols were also used in Star Wars films. That's right, Star Wars ended up taking these pistols and destroying it, sadly. I really don't like it when they destroy historical firearms. Yeah. But yeah, they ended up taking it. I think that became Leia's blaster, I think. I don't know if it was Leia's blaster. I can't remember which one it was, but it was one of those blasters. But the thing is, the design variation ended up inspiring Ruger Manufacturing to manufacture their own model, of which I'm not a big fan of. Now, though, the weird thing is, the German manufacturing detail of this actually kept manufacturing the Luger artillery barrel for a long while. Long after this one, well, was kicked out. So why? Simple. Because many times over, it was used as a hunting type carbine. And the fact is, more than hundreds of Americans and Canadians actually ended up adopting it as a cheaper quality design of a said hunting rifle. The fact is, its 9mm caliber was perfect for downing deer. In fact, many times over, it was also slightly cheaper than most guns, which is kind of hilarious. So I can see why Ruger tried to copy from this. But still, somebody's got to get Ruger on the phone to manufacture this design again. Only a little more accurate to detail, because then it would be a lot more badass. But, yeah. But anyways, guys, check out our other part of the video to actually see what I mean by how good these things were. In fact, see right now on how when it comes to us on the firing range, shall we? Well, I hope y'all like that little shooting gallery. Now, as y'all saw with me and the GoPro, I'm still new with the GoPro. I'm still trying to get used to it. So yeah, probably in later videos I'll be able to get more into how to accurately get it to work correctly. So yeah. But still, let me know down in the comments below of which firearm you love the most in history, and hopefully we can be able to find it. In fact, I'll have to look at my boys from Adelbridge, because these guns are a very badass one in history, and I'm glad that I got to be able to find it. Because yes, I am still keeping this no matter what, because this is history in the making, and to this day, it's still one of my favorites. Yes, this is still one of my favorite, well, German pistols, other than the Walther P38. But still, we can see why the German military kept using it for such a long amount of time. But if any of y'all want to know any type of other information on the Luger and such, I will leave links down below, and as well more information down below if any of y'all want to look at it. As well, I will also leave links down below if y'all want to know more about the subjects and such that I described in this video. Anyways, guys, hopefully you like this video, like and comment for more, and as well, hope to see y'all in the next one. I've been Celtic Templar, and hopefully we can see you more at the gun range. Have a great day, y'all.